welcome back to the STR Intel Podcast. I'm your host, Philip Wilburn, and today I have Craig Callahan with me. Today we're going to be focusing on talking about SB33 bill, the Colorado State Lodging Tax Bill. We'll outline it. We'll kind of do our best to describe the bill and go over the bill, what it is, what its impacts are, and then what you can do to get involved if it affects you. Craig, how's it going?
It's going well. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Friday and taxes.
Taxes, yeah. I mean, not always a fun thing, but we got to have some fun at the state capitol this week.
We did indeed. I've been to the Capitol before, but never with a purpose, I guess.
Yeah.
If you will. So
right. That's a freaking beautiful building too.
It is, and I mean, it's good to see the turnout of people advocating for short-term rentals and just seeing in action, people's voices being heard, and the impact of what we can do if we all come together. So
yeah, I think there was probably 100, 150 people, something
I'd say
like
at
that.
Least, yeah, and had some good conversations. And I think judging by what people were saying that were working there, they haven't seen a turnout like that in quite some time in opposition to a bill. So. Yeah. Shred of optimism there, so we'll see what happens.
And in fact, I think they even called the Senate called a recess because of the disturbance that the CLAA group was causing.
Yep. Hey, well, I mean, made our presence known at least.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So on this bill, obviously, I'm assuming you're opposed to it. But personally, kind of how does this impact you, or why are you so? Why are you here wanting to talk about it?
Absolutely. So, on a couple of fronts, here with my employment, I'm working with homeowners on the front end who are getting into the investment game, who are putting together their first properties, developing the passive income streams, and some work for it. It's a goal for, their lifelong dreams. And it's cool to, help people get that set up, get connected, and truly kind of break out of the status quo of just working that 9 to 5 and punching the clock, and getting that other stream of income going. So obviously my employment would be definitely altered, because this would not do the industry any favors with all the predictions if it did indeed pass. And we can dig into those stats later, but just service view there. And personally, I'm exactly what I just said. I did. I have always wanted a property. Well, I guess that was ignited, from a personal scenario. My father passed a couple of years ago, and when he did, he had some outstanding debts and, whatnot. I'm like, do I inherit that? What's going to happen with that? You don't. But it really sparked in me. I'm like, I want to develop these passive income streams and not just live life, not work till I'm 80 and in the grave. I want to have, multiple things going, and elevating me and my future family. And, I don't have kids yet, hopefully soon, God willing. And I want to teach them, the ins and outs of starting a business and, the effects that it can have on the community, your family, and you really just compound into, passive income and security. So that's kind of what ignited me into the game, into this world, if you will. And I know, obviously, I know your story, but it's good to hear it again. What brought you, what inspired you to start the management company?
Right. Yeah. It was really out of necessity in the market that I was in. Colorado Springs didn't really have any property management companies, so I was looking for a short-term rental property manager. I saw the value of multifamily properties or even STRs and building wealth, and I wanted to pursue that route. But ended up starting a management company just based off necessity and need for it in the area. But now I'm here and opposing this bill to on behalf of all of my homeowners. I have Hosty has over 100 homeowners who are in a similar situation. It's their second home, and they're trying to make a living, and they're trying to build a future for their kids. I'll never forget one of the first houses that we signed on. I sat at the kitchen table it was a couple, and their daughter was 5 or 6 playing on the floor with some toys. And I asked them, I said, what's your intentions with this property? Like long term, what are you looking to get out of this? And they said, this is our daughter's education. Anything that we make with this property is going towards her college education. And Hosty has many other homeowners just like that in the same situation. So I think there's some sort of stigma that a lot of these STR owners or management companies are these huge corporate conglomerates that are out of state investors and funding. But we know now with the study that was done that 75-80% of all Colorado STR owners are in state and live in state. So they're all local residents supporting the community.
Yep. Well, and I mean, that's an important note that I'd like to, elaborate further on the creating generational wealth. And, short-term rentals, investment properties, that's your average Joe, your middle-class shot at passive income. These aren't hedge funds buying short-term rentals. And now that might exist, hedge funds buying developments, so on and so forth. That's not what we're seeing here, not in Colorado. And I think that's what's portrayed in a lot of outside conversations where people aren't involved in the industry. There's just a false representation of who's buying these rentals. It's your teacher in Woodland Park who has a short-term rental to make ends meet so she can live where she wants to.
Right.
Or, it's like I said, your average Joe's shot at passive income. And this bill would directly, cut that out and just, push the middle class down, really.
Yeah. And it's even the short-term industry right now is becoming so competitive that, those margins that people saw before just really aren't there as much. So even with something like this bill passing, it puts more downward pressure for people to not use this as a wealth builder. And also, there's a need for it. Guests are converting to Airbnbs and trying Airbnbs and short-term rentals by the millions every year. So there's a necessity and a need for it in the market.
Well, and wasn't it like post-COVID, the exposure rate on short-term rentals went up about, I think, to like 80%. Like 80% of travelers were now searching for short-term rentals because they got a taste of it. The baby boomers discovered it as, I think, what we equated it to. And they're like, wow, this is nice. We can have our whole family around a table again. We can, have a yard, a grill. You just get, a hotel and a home, the whole concept. But, point being, there is a need, a demand for it. And the market should evolve with that, not try to undercut it.
Yeah, completely agree. So let's dive into it. Let's kind of, let's introduce this, outline the bill a little bit so people know exactly what we're talking about and if they are impacted, which in this case, I'd say if you own an STR and you're operating it more than 90 days a year, which is the large majority, you will be impacted. So, do you have the actual bill? Do you want to kind of just read the first piece of it, and then we can just get into the specifics on it?
So the bill in its entirety, and we can provide links for this too, so everyone can see it. But the bill establishes that for property tax years commencing on January 1st, 2026, a short-term rental unit, which is an improvement that is designated and used as a place of residency by a person, families, that is a primary residence and land upon the improvement is located, may be classified as either residential real property or lodging property. So, I mean, that's the beginning. So basically what they're saying there is if your primary residence is being used as a lodging property, that the tax rate will go up to that lodging tax rate. And what does that mean in layman's terms? They're going to about 400% increase. So it'll go from about 7 to 28%. So, I mean, the numbers, it took me, sitting down with my scratch paper and calculator and going on the assessor site to figure it out. But my cabin that we purchased for $350K about a year ago, my monthly payment would go up about $600, $700 each month. So, the average house sold in Colorado Springs in 2023 was $500,000. So, that's where, on average, from the impact study that we looked at, the average person's taxes would go up about $15K. So about $1,200 a month on top of that payment that you're already doing, right? Which is just nuts. So, and legal reading, I'm sure that was painful to sit and listen to me. But I encourage everybody to read that in its entirety.
So, and we'll post some links in the video so people can access these government websites. But so essentially, if you're operating short-term rental and it's more than 90 days out of the year, they're going to reclassify it as lodging property or as commercial property, and they're going to tax it at 20. You said it was 20.
It's about 28%. It's like 27 point something, but it rounds up to 28.
About 28%. Okay.
And, that's something Colorado Springs specific that I'd like to dig into because, my speculation would be, we have two different types of permit here in Colorado Springs. There's the non-owner occupied, then the owner occupied. Whereas the owner occupied, you get some people who are snowbirds or, they, come to Colorado for 6 months, rent their home for the other 6 months. They would be having to pay this tax bill with the current state of it as I interpret the bill. So your owner occupied would still have to pay it based on this, state overreach over the municipality.
So someone has an owner occupied permit, they can only rent it out 180 days out of the year. The other, they have to live in it. It has to be their primary residence. So they would still be taxed those other 6 months that they're living there.
Yeah. And I mean, that's another question, another layer to this, what if you have that family that lives in Texas for half the year, then this is their, on paper, it's one of their homes. It's not their primary residence because they have two. What happens then? They're renting it out for more than 90 days. So, I mean, there's some ambiguity to it too. And I mean, with bills such as this, I normally don't anticipate nor see them falling in the favor of the taxpayers. Right. So my speculation is that they would have to pay, 4 times the regular amount. So,
yeah. So let's kind of dive into a little bit of the impact of the bill. We can talk about CLAA and the impact survey, what that looked like. So CLAA, for those of you who don't know listening, Colorado Lodging and Resort Alliance. So they basically hired a company. Well, 550 STR owners were commissioned, part of CLAA. So they hired a Tennessee-based consulting group, Lawfer Associates, who conducted an impact survey. And some of those results were, the study indicated that 56% decrease in total Colorado STR bookings based on what individual STR owners said, whether they would sell or they would switch to the 90 days or less. Yep. I can't remember if there was another category, or just stop doing it entirely and go long term or do something else with the property.
Well, that's the important thing, like that I took out of that survey too, was they didn't anticipate any behavioral changes with this bill if it passed in its current state. So something that I think was quite profound was the numbers that they proposed that the taxes would generate was $371 million. Sounds like a lot, right? That's a lot of money for any of us.
What was it for? What is the tax revenue collection? What is that?
So it's supposed to be going towards education right now. So that's the other thing too, right now. And I want to touch on that after this. But what they didn't anticipate for was 89%, I think it's 89% from the survey, said that they would adjust their behavior with renting, meaning they'd switch to midterms, they would rent for 89, 90 days, the high season, and then, you wouldn't get that tax. But then you look at the, other 9 months out of the year, now there's less income going into your community, there's less, places to stay, there's less competition. So that 371 million, that wouldn't happen. Whereas year to year, the last number that Clara put on the study was 1.36 billion in estimated revenue from short-term rental travel. So you look at 371 million to 1.36 billion, there's quite the difference there. So really, it would not, you wouldn't come out ahead. And, with the, $1 billion number, that's going into your local community. So that's going into your coffee shops, your, souvenir shops, your local restaurants and local businesses now, a lot of them are still recovering from COVID. So it's again, just undercutting, the small businesses and, giving it to the state, which, sure, education needs funding, but, should that come from your, private homeowner investors? I would think there'd be plenty of other places for that.
I'm a little confused on the education thing. I don't know if the bill specifies or if they've even got into where the allocation of funds are going to go. But from our meeting with Claire at the Capitol Tuesday, Senator Hansen, which is one of the bill sponsors, had indicated something kind of different. So this is a direct quote from him. But so Senator Chris Hansen said this bill's impact is being overblown. I want to create tax fairness, not trying to hurt the tourism industry, and just create tax parity between STRs, Airbnb, or bed and breakfasts, and hotels. And then he also had stated STR guests use a disproportionate amount of fire, police, and ambulance services. So confused about the
I want to
education
dig
thing.
into
But
and like where, like where the numbers are coming from, the disproportionate police. And
I'd also
ambulance.
like to see if that study, if there is a study on that.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to find anything as far as studies, but that's what he had said at the Capitol. So
That's interesting. And I mean, we were looking at the Secretary of State site, which is public record. So if anyone wants to fact check this, feel free. But there was like 6 pages of opposition and monitoring for this bill.
I think it was 100. I think I saw 150 total.
150. And the only lobbyist in support of this bill was Denver Public Schools. So it's like, out of the 100 and so many lobbyists, everyone is either neutral on it or opposed to it. So I thought that was an interesting point that we discovered this morning.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess my question is, why is the state stepping in and proposing this bill when local governments can propose their own taxes, right? And and a lot of cities and counties, they already have.
Exactly. I mean, like when you start a short-term rental in Colorado Springs, you're paying a permit fee, you're paying lodging tax, you're paying sales tax, and you're paying revenue tax on top of that.
State and city, yeah.
So I mean, a lot of it's baked into the cake, and then the conversation of pass it on to the guest gets a little tiresome too, because I mean, we all use short-term rentals when we travel and stuff. We all see and we're aware that the fees and service fees and taxes, they're all adding up. And
hotels do the same thing. They just have a way of kind of hiding it within the fee, but hotels pass it on to the guest. Just like
I agree, like it should be, but I think that it's also being misrepresented that you can just pass all these charges. Why do homeowners care that we're going to crank the taxes up? They'll just pass them to the guests. That's not how it works. And then with the local economy, like if a guest is spending more to book the place, they're spending less in other places. They're spending less on experiences, on meals, on souvenirs. So like that was a solution put forward from the side wanting this to move forward, that it'll just get passed on to the guest anyway, which I'm sure homeowners would try, but the guest can only take and pay so much,
right?
Where a lot of that's already happening with taxes and permit fees and what have you. So it's just another layer of expenses for them. So actually, as a guest, even if you don't have a short-term rental and you plan on traveling to Colorado, this will affect you. So,
well, yeah. And if that happens, you say, 50-something% of total STRs are no longer available. And then those left over are trying to compensate for that tax. So they're hiking up they're passing on all that cost to the guest. Well, then essentially the Colorado's tourism STRs becomes no longer affordable.
Well, and then what happens to the quality of these homes too? Competition breeds innovation, whereas if there's less competition on the market, homes could become complacent.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And then, you're sticking all this money into taxes, you're going to be less likely to update that, paint job on the outside that needs to happen. Like it just, I don't see, I'm an optimistic guy, but I don't see, the positive on this. I think it'd just be a huge downturn in the market. So
it seems like a very short-term solution to collect revenue for a problem they have from a different sector completely.
Well, and a lot of people think being part of Host, a management company, that you must hate restrictions and regulations. Like, no, just make them make sense. Let the municipalities, the counties dictate that. State overreach, which I believe this is truly overreach, is never the answer. And to me, my speculation is that is a slippery slope. Then your ADU above the garage, your mother-in-law suite above the garage, that's going to be next. Your midterm rentals, that's corporate activity or commercial activity. That's next. Long-term rentals, you got 4 units of long-term rentals, that's commercial activity. So I don't see it stopping. I see this being the start if it's not stopped. Right. And then, we'll be at a spot, 10 years from now. And how did we get here? It doesn't make sense to be an investor anymore at that point.
Right.
So
yeah, once that door's open, then they have full reign to implement anything on top of it.
And I mean, strong growing cities need investors. That's the backbone of it, investors and small businesses. And, like I said, the more government overreach and, taxes going to the state level, that doesn't do anything for your local community in Old Colorado City, in Manitou Springs, in, Breckenridge, Crested Butte. And that's something interesting from the CLAA survey too. the mud season in these mountain towns.
Yeah.
And mountain towns, like I'll certainly listen to the conversation that housing crisis could be a thing in a mountain town, limited housing, so on and so forth. Sure, put caps on them. A lot of them did.
Yeah.
But the short-term rentals allow a 365 destination town, whereas people are going there for mountain biking, they're going there for nature. And if these mountain towns now can only rent their short-term rentals for 90 days, which 90 days do you think that's going to be? It's going to be ski season.
Right.
So they're just going to, cut the mud season, is what they call it, down to nothing. And small businesses will close, where these, people that live there permanently going to make their money. So I think we're looking at it, as you said, at a very micro level where the macroeconomics of this is just not really being addressed.
Completely agree. I think there was another point too I wanted to outline from the impact survey as well. It was the anticipated amount of jobs that were impacted by this. I want to say, let me see if I can find it here.
I think it was 8148. Fact check me on that, please.
You got it.
8148.
Yep. 81. So 8,148 tourism jobs would be affected by this, which is definitely considerable.
Well, and I mean, like we were saying before, like not only is this small businesses, but there is another stat in this industry that one house helps employ about 5 different positions. Whether that's the management company, the cleaning team, the media team, the hot tub company, the handyman. Like there's just such a ripple effect.
I mean, just with Hosty alone, hundreds of cleaners.
Yeah.
And I mean, from when we started, it was individuals that started a cleaning business and they've built that business up. Now they're cleaning hundreds of homes.
And then employing other people. So it just like it breeds innovation, breeds entrepreneurs, and it's a cool thing to sit back and watch it grow. But then when you're taking away the sunlight, it's gonna stop growing. So
yeah.
But yeah, and I mean another aspect too, and I know we're kind of jumping from jobs to everything else, but something I thought was impactful, and I talked to a real estate brokerage yesterday on this tax bill. Shout out to Bailey Carter and Coldwell Banker. But we talked about this bill and the impact it would have on real estate agents. And, first and foremost, not just real estate agents, but property values. Obviously, that's, catered to largely their industry. But for every, I think it was 10% increase in a tax rate, home values went down about 0.6%. So
we're looking at 28%
28%
increase. So that would be,
and that was over a 10. I had that written down too, but that was over like a 10-year span, I believe that this case study was, because this was over the last 12 years they did a case study on this, and for every 10% that the tax is raised, the property values go down about 1/6. It didn't have a time duration in the survey, but still an important thing to note, because your property values go down. It just has, again, a tremendous macro effect on the economy. And then with real estate agents too, like why they should pay attention to this. If you work with a lot of investors, their purchasing power is going to be severely limited, because the average house was 500 some thousand in 2023. When they're adding an extra $1,200 to that payment, now their investment property is going to be $400,000 or even less. I'm not going to do that math on the fly, but it's just going to limit their purchasing power and limit the inventory they can buy, so on and so forth. So that's why I think the real estate and they have been involved. I saw some real estate groups up at the Capitol on Tuesday, but that's why they're paying attention, and frankly everyone should. So.
Yeah. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to the podcast today. Check out this house we filmed in today. It's called Victorian Charm. It's a 5-bedroom, 2.5 bath. It's right off downtown Colorado Springs area. It's got all the amenities. It's got a hot tub, a fire pit, a foosball table. Great house, Victorian Charm, with brand new upgrades to the kitchen, renovations all over the place. Check out the link in the description if you're interested in booking it. A lot of the people I talked to with Clara at the Capitol, they were all just individual homeowners. A couple of them had condos in Keystone and Breckenridge, and the majority of them said, "Hey, this is my 401k.
Yeah.
This is my retirement." And I already have cities like Breck that are limiting the amount of reservations that I can actually get within a year, and I only rent mine out 6 months out of the year anyway. And I would absolutely have to sell if this were
Yeah.
if this were to go into effect.
Well, and that just reminded me of a conversation I had with a woman on Tuesday too. She was from Del Norte, which small town, rural Colorado. I actually couldn't point it out on a map, but she was saying that, the short-term rentals they have, that is, like a huge part of their income, and there's no hotels or lodging there. Yeah. You're not going to see a hotel chain built up in Del Norte, Colorado. I mean, you could, but, and that point being too, the stat you said earlier, 75 to 80% of these STRs are owned by Colorado owners. Your hotel chains, I mean, there'll always be a place in this world for hotels. I'm not saying they should go away, but those are outside investors. Those are hedge funds, and, good for them. They're being able to, throw some money and make these investments. But, the Colorado mindset, of, hey, we want to make it fair. Who are you making it fair for? These outside investors coming into our state and building hotels, or our homeowners, our hardworking people that live here? So
yeah, I've seen a lot. I think that was something that Senator Hansen had mentioned several times, is the tax fairness. But I mean, in my opinion, compared to bed and breakfasts and hotels, it's not an equal comparison, because they have a lot of different revenue streams that you can do out of a hotel or bed and breakfast. It's in the name. They can sell food, they can sell alcohol, they can sell a number of different services that typically a STR just can't do.
And that's an important thing to notate, I think, too, because people in favor of this bill, they're like, well, a bed and breakfast is taxed at this. Why shouldn't you guys? Well, and the question I had before too is like, you should ask why bed and breakfasts are taxed so high. But, point being, they can sell alcohol, they can sell food. I mean, that's a hotel. You go to a hotel, there's a bar and a restaurant in the lobby. It kind of comes with the package. Yeah. So, I mean, they're a lot more similar to that than they are short-term rentals. Whereas a short-term rental, you can't sell any of those services. You're, renting out a room, you're renting out your property for a 1 to 29 day stay. So there's a stark difference when you look at the two. And then
even from, sorry to cut you off,
no, you're good.
Even from an operations standpoint, like how you're managing a hotel, you can have staff on site at that hotel, and you get these you get these advantages of having all of your operation support there at the property, versus STRs. You don't have that. You've got all your staff is outsourced from somewhere else, and they have to drive to those properties. So you don't have those kinds of advantages.
Yeah, which is great for the job growth of the economy feeding off of short-term rentals. But yeah, a difference nonetheless. And then, something with this, quote, fairness, commercial lodging is, your hotels are assessed differently. They assess them in, I think, 3 different manners, where they can basically pick the most favorable one. Whereas it wouldn't be apples to apples on the assessment for these homes. It would just be based on, as I understand it, the appraised value of the properties. So and that's where, you get the $15K on average per year, whereas hotels, they can do, and you could probably speak better on this because you're the one that kind of explained it to me, but the revenue generated, and there's a couple other ones on there, I believe.
Yeah, they have, I think, 3 main ways, but there's a ton of different ways they can do it at. So they have a cost approach, a sales comparison approach, and an income capitalization approach. From which, what I understand, there are hybrid methods. You can use all these, but the income capitalization approach is the most common for hotels. But essentially, they're able to, let's see. I don't know it that way. They're never worked in hotels, but
I think main point being is it's not apples to apples on the approach that they would be appraising these properties and configuring the tax formula. So
that was the income capitalization approach was estimating the value of the property based on its ability to generate future income. But I mean, the point being, a hotel has the ability to do their taxes at a much higher level and degree of efficiency than an individual homeowner.
Yeah.
So there are just a lot more advantages when it comes to assessing the property tax on a hotel versus an individual residential STR.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, like I said before, there'll always be a place for hotels, but there is always going to be a place for short-term rentals. Like we said earlier in this conversation, the market got a taste for it. The consumer wants this, so they're not going to go away. And a shout out to Marriott Homes and Villas. We list with them. They do a wonderful job of presenting homes that fit a certain quality standard, and they're in tandem growing with us. I think they're doing a beautiful job of that.
Yeah, and yeah, most hotels, at least the major chains, like you mentioned, Marriott, have joined the STR market, and now they're offering like properties or actual STR properties for people to book out. So, let's talk a little bit more about kind of actions that people listening, if they want to get involved, how do they get involved? How can they be heard? So the next event that we're seeing, and we can kind of even we'll try to outline the political policy procedures and how that works, which I'm still learning. But so the next date, February 20th, coming up in about 2 weeks here at the Capitol, they're going to have a Senate Finance Committee hearing on it. So it'll be the first, from what I know, the first actual introduction into the Senate, right?
Correct. And that was an interesting standout from Tuesday too. I mean, it's a legislative session. There's a ton of bills being proposed, but so many people are like, we've never heard of that one yet. And so it'll be being introduced to the Senate on the 20th at 2 p.m. And that's the first that I believe a lot of them will be going through in its entirety. Mm-hmm. But the important part being that is the part where they will be listening to testimony from community members. So that's the big call to action.
That's the only hearing or reading they're going to have where people can testify. So they you can testify in person, which I think they're going to limit it to like a minute from what I hear. It's normally 3 minutes, but just because of the amount of people, it's going to be a minute. So you can either testify in person on the 20th, or you can do a written testimony, or I think you can do video testimony.
You can do Zoom. Yep.
Zoom.
And if I have a link that if we could embed in this and show people how to do that too. That you can pick between in person, Zoom, or written, and then once you're on that link, you just pick by bill sponsor, so Weissman or Hansen, and then you can scroll down to the February 20th date, and then enter all your information. So super easy. If anyone has questions, please reach out to us. But something with the testimony part, the Chamber of Colorado Springs did a learn how to testify event, and I thought that was very impactful because it sounds intimidating. You're going to go testify in front of Senate. It sounds like you're on trial for something, So I was intimidated at first too. I'm like, what am I getting myself into? I'm signed up to go, and I'm excited for it. And basically, I asked a couple of the aides that I talked to on Tuesday, what is the most impactful way to testify? What is going to be the most weighted? What will they listen to? And it was the personal story. It's, why does this resonate with you? Yeah, we get you oppose it. You're here. You're in opposition for it. But why? Tell us your personal story. Yeah. And then, she said, propose solutions. My solution would be just to, abolish this entirely. But
let local governments.
That'd be my solution. Yeah. But, I think the problem, the key root of this is, it could be several things, but in my opinion, everyone tries to put short-term rentals in a box where it doesn't quite fit in any of the boxes they're trying to put it in. But to stay on the testifying thing, if it's under or if it's a minute, tell your personal story, address them cordially, and then, thank them for their time. That was the simplified version of how and why you should do it from what the chamber has, instructed, and then talking to the aides.
Yeah, because you only have a minute anyway.
You only have a minute. I can talk fast, but I don't know how much I can get out in a minute that's, weighted. And then something, learning all about local politics and how bills are, advanced, like I'm back in elementary school, but, paying more attention this time. So from what I understand, the bill will be presented to the Senate on the 20th, and then it sounds like it'll be presented to them again after that. Mm-hmm. And then after that, whether it gets passed on or not, well, I guess if it got passed and approved, it'd go to House, the House or Congress. So that's how I understood it. And the legislative session in Colorado, I think it's statewide or nationwide actually, they have till May to figure these out. So January to May, as I understand it. Okay. So that's the gist of it. And
then even then, if it gets passed in the House, it would go on, and the governor still has the ability to veto it, which I think typically he's been against tax increases. So there is a likelihood of that happening if it were to get that
some
far.
Shreds of optimism. And I actually did send an email to one of the sponsors. I think it was Senator Weissman. And, he did state that there has been, a lot of outreach on this bill. and that there was, a ton of opposition, and that there'll be substantial amendments. So, substantial amendments, what does that mean? I'd love to know.
The only thing I had heard, and this was from Senator Hansen on Tuesday, he had mentioned there will be an amendment to 180 days, basically over if you operate over 180 days. So that's kind of the first, but same thing I've heard. There's going to be a lot of different proposed amendments, and the way that it's written right now is just it's going to get. Well, there's going to be some red ink on
that
it.
100-something amount of lobbyists that we saw this morning. If half of them approve amendments or propose amendments, that's going to be a lot to shift through. So, I mean, hopefully, this all lands in the best way possible. But the other important thing that I think people should be doing is going to findmylegislator.gov and talking to your local representative. You put in your address and it'll tell you who to reach out to. Send them an email because, like I said, a lot of them didn't even know what's going on now. Now when they see Senate House Bill SB33 on the docket, they'll have a little bit more context to it and know that how their community feels on it. So
yeah, perfect. Okay. Anything else on actions that people can do? So talk to your local legislation. Go on, we'll post that site on Find My, what was it? Find My
Legislator.gov, I believe it was.
So we can post that on there. Join CLAA and complete the impact survey, because I believe that is still an ongoing survey. Yep. And I'm sure they'll probably, once they introduce these amendments, do another survey based on whatever those amendments are. To get the impact out of that.
And then, I think the most weighted one is the, testify date. So, 2/20 at 2 p.m. And the important thing, to note there too, that could change. So, watch us for updates, talk to people, get involved, Google it. But it could change based on scheduling. Sometimes it changes last minute, which is unfortunate if you drive up to Denver and you're waiting there all day. But, it's, you can either do something about it or just talk about it, and
and there's nothing to say this will or won't go through and get passed. But like you said, I mean, better to get involved and voice your opinion and be heard than just letting it happen. And then by then there's not much you can do at that point. Too late,
and you can't complain about it if you didn't try to do anything. So there's still some silver lining, hopefully, and. With short-term rentals, I guess I sound like beating a dead horse at this point, but just the tremendous impact on the local economies that it has, and for small businesses, I think it's quite profound. And rules, restrictions, taxes. Okay, let's just make them make sense.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Local governments are already implementing a lot of taxing and restrictions already as it is. I mean, I know here in Colorado Springs, we talked about the ordinance they already have here, where people have to purchase an STR permit and follow all the guidelines and regulations. They're already being taxed with a lodging tax, a city and state sales tax. So individuals are already being taxed. But that's kind of like the long term is the impact on the actual tourism industry and what these STRs and local communities bring.
Well, and I was, just on Colorado Avenue in Old Colorado City yesterday, and you look around, there's no hotels over there. And if you're at a hotel, you're gonna, go down to the lobby to Starbucks and get a cup of coffee, not your local, cafe.
Dang it, we were trying to get sponsored by Starbucks.
Sorry, Starbucks. But you're gonna, if you're in a short-term rental in Old Colorado City, you're gonna walk down to Carnelian's, to Jives, to I think there's Franklin's. I don't know. There's a ton of local businesses there where, the hotels, they have, the chain restaurants, which good. There's, like I said, there's a time and place for it. But Old Colorado City, there's nothing close as far as hotels where you could walk to these shops, walk to these restaurants. Scooter, that's a thing now. You can scooter anywhere. So
I mean, at Hosey, we offer discounts at local restaurants. So local and specific businesses and restaurants, and we drive our guests to local businesses and restaurants because we want them to be part of the community and experience the Colorado like we like Colorado Springs. And not, like you said, just stay at a hotel and eat a bagel and a coffee at a Starbucks.
Yeah, get an Einstein bagel. Cool. They're great, but you know.
And then the mud seasons, the mud towns, your ski destinations. I've talked to so many people that were talking about their business that they were able to keep open because of STRs, where people are coming, like you said, I went up to, where was it? Aspen Snowmass last year, and it was during the summer, and it's fairly dead. There weren't too many people there, but even the businesses there, the bars and businesses there were able to stay open because of STRs in the area that were around.
Well, and to that point, too, that hypothetical amendment of 180 days, that would still be the same case there. It's one way or another that's going to impact those small businesses. There's no way around it. I guess the only way around it is to not do it. Then it wouldn't impact them. But,
right. And again, this is just, we need more nuanced rules than just trying to create tax fairness on different industries that they're just not the same. It's not an apples to apples comparison. They're just not the same. So we need a specific nuanced taxing regulation specifically for STRs.
I got a hot topic for short-term rentals. It intertwines with this, but the housing crisis. So, everyone wants to point a finger for the housing crisis, right? The housing market's overheated, prices are going up, so on and so forth. Colorado Springs specifically, we're approaching 760,000 people. That's a lot. Mm-hmm. Less than 1%, so 0.07%. Last I looked at the data was single family housing. So, that's just a fraction. That's a fly in the windshield in the big picture. There's so many other factors at play. And people want to, point fingers. And we should find out what's causing the housing crisis. Sure. But, if all short-term rentals in Colorado Springs disappeared tomorrow, we'd be likely in the same situation that we are in right now.
Yeah, look, short term you'd see an opening of some properties, but long term it wouldn't have that impact. Yeah, I've seen several national and other state studies that had kind of similar results, that the impact of STRs on the housing crisis were pretty negligible. There just wasn't that much. It was similar to the number that you had said.
Wanted to bring that up because that's conversations I have with people sometimes where they are in favor of heavier regulations or more taxes, and that's feeding a lot of their conversations, and it's frankly not factual. So if you look at the numbers and do the math, you'll see that in plain sight. So.
Yeah, there's even the talk of, I've heard a lot, personal property rights too, and government imposing on people's personal property rights. So that's always the
new dog tax. That's not happening, but
yeah, I don't even talk about the dog tax. But I almost equate this bill to being similar. I don't know what finance committee put this together, what numbers they have, but it's just not very clear what they're going to use this tax revenue for. And again, if the long-term results of that are actually negative.
One, I think, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but I think it just goes to show that a lot of these policymakers are out of touch with the communities that they're representing. And that's where, full circle again, like reaching out to your representatives is so impactful because, the opposition on Tuesday, nobody expected that. They didn't expect that. Like we said, they had a recess call that, to our knowledge was not scheduled. Yeah. And it's making the voice heard and, making them actually be in touch with the communities.
Understanding the impact of these policies you're trying to pass. Yeah, absolutely. And it's this should be at a county and city level. County and cities are what pay for the schools, the police service, the emergency services. That should be on the level. It should be assessed like it already is for the most part, assessed on each individual city level of what is our need and what is the impact of short-term rentals versus this giant, state, state kind of throwing a grenade at a fly approach. Okay. Let's see. Anything else we wanted to? Any other thing from the CLA Impact Study? I think we covered most of that.
I think we did.
The tourism impact, the job impact, and then the amount average cost to owners. That $15K mark is what that impact study saw is $15K additional a year to individual STR homeowners.
Yeah, I think that about covers it. And all these numbers that we are referencing, they do have
and we can
reference.
We can attach a link to that as well, the actual impact survey.
And shout out to Clara for doing all that. I know it's a lot of groundwork that they did on the fly.
Absolutely.
I mean, it seemed like this came out of nowhere. Then all of a sudden, they're there, unified against this, and it's cool to see that.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. Airbnb is definitely obviously against it. But I know they're representing this, and I had met with one of their policymakers a couple months ago about the bill, and they are involved, and you can even see them on the Colorado Secretary of State page on the actual, lobbyist page. I think there's like 5 or 6 entries from Airbnb. I don't know how they break that up, but, they are involved. I don't think I saw Marriott on that page, but from what Airbnb had told me is that Marriott was involved, and they were opposing this as well.
Well, and VRBO's been huge on it too, sending out updates to homeowners in Colorado. I'm from the VRBO government affairs, so it's been a lot of people moving towards one goal on this. So it's just cool to see all the support. So
yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, we can wrap it up, and let's just kind of recap how people can get involved once again. And again, we'll post all these links on the video down below. So if you just hit that more button, you can see all those links. But yeah, we encourage you, if you are going to be impacted by this, if you own an STR, if you believe in personal property rights,
you rent them.
If you're renting, get involved, make your voice heard, reach out to your local legislation, voice your concerns and your opinion with this bill. And then if you can, in whatever way possible, be there on the 20th at the Senate hearing, the first Senate hearing, your only chance to have your voice heard there. And if you can't be there, you can either hop on the Zoom link or you can do a written testimony beforehand. That's even property managers, get your employees involved, get your cleaners involved, get your maintenance personnel involved. All those personal stories from them and the impact of their job will really make an impact and a difference. Anything else? That's the big ones?
Yeah, that's the big ones for calls to action. And yeah, I mean, just paying attention to what's happening. This one, like I said, it feels like it snuck up. And
and
just being engaged in your local politics
and
makes a difference.
From talking to all the senators, they were just, again, they hadn't even heard of this. Again, it hasn't properly been introduced to them, and I'm sure they have hundreds, if not thousands of bills come across their desk, and they didn't seem to know or necessarily care. It was just another bill. So yeah, definitely get involved and make your voice heard when it comes to this. So awesome. Well,
happy Friday.
Happy Friday, man.
And we'll see where we land on this one. So,
cool.
Thank you guys for listening.
Thanks.